I still remember the heat on my skin the day Elder Michael returned. It wasn't the harsh kind of heat that burns and exhausts you. It was the warm, golden kind that makes the earth smell alive. Red soil rising with the scent of rain from the night before, cooking fires already sending thin smoke into the morning sky. It was the kind of day that should have been remembered for laughter, for dancing feet, for celebration. Instead, it became the first day of a nightmare we didn't recognize soon enough. In our village, news doesn't travel fast. It settles. It moves from mouth to mouth, from compound to compound, growing heavier with each retelling. So by the time word spread that Brother Michael was coming home for good, the entire village already felt involved in his return. We called him Elder Michael, not because he was the oldest among us, but because of what his life had come to represent. He left when many of us were young. Back then he was just Michael, strong, quiet, respectful. He worked harder than anyone I knew, not because he wanted praise, but because he believed effort was a form of prayer. When he announced he was leaving for America, people gathered around him with mixed emotions. Some were proud, some were jealous. Some quietly believed he would never return. America had that reputation, a place that swallowed people whole and returned them strangers, if it returned them at all. But Michael was different. Before he left, I remember someone asking him, half joking, "When you reach there, will you remember this village?" Michael smiled, wiped sweat from his brow, and said something I never forgot. "If I forget where I come from, then everything I gain will mean nothing." Years passed. Letters came first, then phone calls, then money sent home quietly, without announcements. Roofs were fixed, school fees were paid, medical bills were covered without names attached. Slowly, the village realized Michael hadn't just survived abroad, he had grown. When the two-story mansion began rising at the edge of the village, it became a symbol, not of wealth alone, but of return, of someone who left, endured, and still remembered home. So, when we heard he was coming back permanently, we prepared the way villages always do, without being told. Women swept compounds until the earth itself looked polished. Men cleared the road leading to his house. Children practiced songs they barely understood, just happy to be part of something important. Elders argued over who would speak first when he arrived. We expected drums. We expected dancing. We expected Elder Michael to sit under the mango tree and talk until night swallowed the day. What we did not expect was silence. I was standing near the dusty road when I saw him. At first, I didn't recognize him. His body looked smaller somehow, like life had gently folded him inward. His shoulders were slightly bent, and his steps were careful, measured, as though he was listening to the ground before placing his feet. But then he lifted his head and smiled. That smile, soft, searching, familiar, erased all doubt. Before the crowd could reach him fully, his siblings rushed forward. Too fast, too tight. They wrapped their arms around him, speaking over one another, touching his shoulders, his arms, his back. Not in celebration, but in possession. His sister, Francisca, held his arm firmly, guiding him as though he might fall apart if left alone. At first, we smiled. Family love looks like that sometimes. But something felt wrong. Michael tried to greet people, lifting his hand, opening his mouth, but his siblings answered for him. They ushered him forward, steering him away from the crowd and toward the house. There were no drums, no singing, no speeches. By the time the sun dipped low, the gates of the mansion were closed, and Elder Michael vanished inside his own home. The first few days, we made excuses for them. He must be tired, we said. Travel at his age is not easy. But days turned into weeks, and no one saw him. Not walking outside, not sitting on the balcony, not greeting elders, not laughing with children. Anyone who approached the house was stopped at the gate. Francisca always spoke for him, He is resting. He is not feeling well. He cannot see anyone. The words began to sound rehearsed. I remember the first time fear touched me clearly. I had gone to the house in the late afternoon, hoping just to greet him from afar. Before I could knock, Francisca appeared, blocking my path. You should go home, she said. Not angry, not gentle, controlled. That night, sleep refused to come. In villages, truth rarely arrives with noise. It creeps in through patterns, through absences, through things that no longer make sense. And slowly, whispers began to move. People said Michael looked thinner. People said his phone was gone. People said he cried at night. But fear dresses itself as respect. It is family matter, elders said. We should not interfere. So we stayed quiet. And in that quiet, something dark grew stronger. Far away, across the ocean, his daughter felt it first. Calls went unanswered. Messages returned with vague explanations. Your father is sleeping. He is resting. He is fine. But daughters know when silence is heavy. After weeks of unanswered questions, she booked a flight home. The day she arrived, I watched her scan the village for her father's face. She didn't find it. Francisca smiled and said casually, your father traveled to the capital. The lie was thin, too thin, and in that moment, everything began to unravel. The lie should have ended everything immediately, but lies rarely collapse all at once. They stretch, they resist, they harden when challenged. When Francisca told Michael's daughter that her father had traveled to the capital, the words hung in the air like smoke. No direction, no detail, no timeline, just enough to block further questions, or so she thought. I was standing close enough to see the change in the daughter's eyes. It wasn't panic, it wasn't anger, it was something colder, clarity. She nodded slowly, as if accepting the explanation. But anyone who truly knew Elder Michael understood how impossible that story was. Michael loved routine. He loved communication, and above all, he loved his daughter. He would never leave without calling her first, never disappear into silence. That same evening, she asked to see his room. Francisca refused. He is not around, she said quickly. And even if he were, he needs rest. The daughter asked again the next morning. Denied. She asked the following day. Denied again. Each refusal chipped away at patience and replaced it with something sharper. Suspicion. I watched her begin to move differently through the village. She listened more than she spoke. She asked questions carefully. She sat with elders. She spoke to neighbors who lived close to the mansion. She observed. And the more she listened, the more the story she was being told collapsed. People mentioned hearing crying at night. Others mentioned seeing food trays returned untouched. Someone said Michael had been asking for his phone weeks earlier, and it was taken away. Still, fear lingered. It is not our place, people whispered. But silence has a limit, and the daughter reached hers. One afternoon, she confronted Francisca directly at the gate. I want to see my father, she said, her voice calm but firm. He is resting. You have said that every day, the daughter replied. Let me see him resting. Francisca looked away. That evening, the daughter came to us. The youths who still believed that right was right, even when it was uncomfortable. She spoke quietly, but her words were heavy. They are hiding him. No one interrupted her. No one laughed, because by then, we all knew. She told us about the unanswered calls, the repeated lies, the refusal to allow even a glimpse of her father, the way Francisca controlled every movement around the house. This is not care, she said. This is imprisonment. The word landed hard. Imprisonment. We agreed to take the matter to the village chief. The chief was an old man, respected not because he was loud, but because he was fair. When the daughter spoke, He listened without interruption. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long moment, his fingers interlocked, his gaze distant. Finally, he spoke. "If a man builds a house with his sweat," he said slowly, "and becomes a prisoner inside it, then the village has failed him." The room went quiet. Then he stood. "We will go to that house." Word spread quickly, not with excitement, with dread. As we walked toward the mansion, the village felt unnaturally quiet. No children playing, no radios, even the birds seemed to have gone silent. The house loomed ahead of us, tall, proud, and strangely lifeless. The gates were closed, the windows dark. We knocked. No response. We knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Francisca appeared moments later, panic flashing briefly across her face before she masked it with anger. "What is this?" she demanded. "Why are you here?" The chief stepped forward. "We are here to see Michael. He is not available." The chief's voice did not rise. "If he is alive," he said, "we will see him." Francisca shouted. She protested. She accused us of interference. But the words no longer held power. The chief turned to us. "Open the door." My heart pounded as we moved forward. The first strike shook the frame. The second cracked the lock. The third broke the door open completely. The sound echoed through the compound, loud, violent, and irreversible. What waited inside was worse than anything we imagined. The smell hit first: stale air, sickness, neglect. Then we saw him. Elder Michael lay on a thin mattress, his body shrunken, his skin hanging loosely over bone. His eyes were half open, unfocused. His chest rose and fell weakly, as though each breath was a negotiation with death. For a moment, no one moved. Then his daughter screamed. Women cried out. Some of us fell to our knees. This was not rest. This was starvation. This was abandonment. This was an attempt to erase a man quietly. Francisca shouted behind us. Her brothers screamed, but it was too late. The lie had been exposed. We lifted Michael carefully. He was lighter than he should have been, frighteningly light. As we carried him out, his siblings tried to block us, shouting that we were killing him, that we were interfering. But no one listened. The village watched in shock as we carried Elder Michael through the streets. People cried openly. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly. Oxygen, fluids, monitoring. Time slowed. Minutes stretched. Then, movement, a shallow breath, a flicker behind his eyes. He was alive. Barely, but alive. As relief washed over us, another emotion followed quickly behind it. Anger. Not wild anger, focused anger. Because now we understood something clearly. This was never about care. It was about control. And control, when exposed, does not disappear. It only changes form. The hospital did not feel like a place of healing that night. It felt like a courtroom. People filled the corridors, villagers who had followed us, elders who had heard the news, women clutching their wrappers tightly, as if holding themselves together. No one spoke loudly. No one joked. Every sound felt heavy, deliberate. Elder Michael lay on the narrow hospital bed, tubes running from his arms, a mask pressed over his mouth. Machines beeped softly, each sound reminding us how close we had come to losing him. His daughter never left his side. She held his hand like she was afraid it might disappear if she let go. Her eyes never left his face, not even when nurses came and went, not even when doctors spoke in low voices outside the room. For the first few hours, Michael did not speak, but his eyes followed movement. They recognized. They remembered. And slowly, painfully, the truth began to surface. The doctor told us plainly, Elder Michael had not suffered a sudden illness. His condition was the result of prolonged neglect, severe malnutrition, dehydration, emotional stress, isolation. In simple words, This did not happen overnight. Someone had been doing this to him. The room went silent. I watched the daughter's face harden, not with hatred, but with resolve. Tears slid down her cheeks, but her jaw remained tight. This was no longer about grief. This was about justice. The siblings arrived at the hospital later that night. Not together, separately. Each one cautious, each one defensive. They stood outside the room, speaking in whispers, avoiding eye contact with the villagers, who now looked at them differently. The respect they once carried dissolved the moment Elder Michael was carried out of that house. They tried to explain. They tried to justify. They said he was difficult. They said he refused food. They said he was confused. But lies sound weak when truth is breathing in front of you. Episode 2, coming soon. Relax and find out what happened to Elder Michael's betrayers in Episode 2.